Welcome back to Flash Tracks Woodworking. You can see behind me that I like the pegboard approach to storing some of my everyday tools. However, not all the tools fit so nicely on the pegboard, so I built this drawer since the last episode to hold some items such as pliers, calipers, punches, files, router bits, etc. The drawer front that you see here is made with a technique that I had shown in an earlier video when I made this camping sign. I'll provide a link for that sign in the end description, and also you'll see it as a link at the end of the video itself. Putting some of those items in the drawer has freed up some pegboard space, so I'll be organizing that space a little bit. And I'll be making some custom-built signs like these in order to hang next to some purpose-built holders that are going to be there on the pegboard to hold items like screwdrivers and chisels. So let's get to it. The project will begin with a drawing for the CNC machine. So I've already done a lot of that drawing work. You can see it here. I've got 4 different signs that I'm making, one for chisels, one for slotted screwdrivers, Torx drivers, and Phillips drivers. Each of these signs will be about, 8 inches wide, 1.5 inches tall. The chisels will have line art for their little graphic, and then the slotted Torx and Phillips drivers will have sort of a bit of an icon here or some clip art that shows what the end of the screwdriver looks like, just for fun. So they're fairly easy to make. In fact, I thought I'd do a little demo here. If I go to, let's say, get a blank page here, and to make one of those pictures, start with a circle, and let's make it 3/4 inch in diameter in the center. Zoom in on that a bit, close it, and then to make the other sort of screwdriver ends, there's a really nice star tool here in this Vectric VCarve software. We'll start with the Torx, which has 6 points on it, and we'll give it an outer radius of 1/4 inch and an inner radius percentage of 60%, and we create that. Close it. So that's looking a bit like the Torx, but it needs to be rounded a little bit more. So we'll come down here to this offset tool. We'll offset it on the outside 0.05 inch, delete the original, and offset once I select it. Select, offset. And now we have something that looks sort of like a Torx head. So that was pretty easy. I'll close that. Let's delete that Torx, and then let's do a Phillips. So I'll go back to the star tool, drop it down to 4 points. Same outer radius, but the inner radius will make a percentage of just 10%. Create that, close it, select it, offset it the same 0.05 inch, delete the original, and offset. And now we have something that looks something like a Torx head. A Phillips head. So with that, we'll close the demo page and reopen the signs page here so we can see what they all look like. So we'll drill some holes here that we'll put some 1/4 inch dowels into the pegboard behind, cut them out, and then we'll have this artwork on each of the 4 individual signs. If we want to see what that's going to look like, we can go and render it. First, look at what we're going to see when we do the laser fill. So as we fill with the laser, we'll have the lettering on here for the chisels, slotted Torx and Phillips, and their associated graphics. These are all the ones that are actually going to be etched back and forth with the laser, whereas for the chisels, we're actually going to draw them in as lines. So that's a little bit different toolpath that we're using for the chisels. And then we'll put the holes in with a 1/8 inch downcut bit, and then finally do the cutouts with that same bit is in the machine. We'll go ahead and cut out around the signs, and we'll leave some tabs in here that keep these signs from becoming loose and rattling around in the machine after they're cut out. And then we'll just remove those tabs with a chisel and then a file to get them nice and smooth. So that's that's what we'll have at the end of the CNC work. We'll have 4 of these signs that are ready to be placed on the pegboard. The first part of the CNC machining operation is really more like a printing operation. I've clamped down a piece of 1/8 inch maple plywood, and the laser will go along and fill in the characters and also fill in the clip art for the screwdriver ends. Following the fill operation, the chisel ends will be made by simply placing lines rather than a fill operation to make the graphics for those. Following the laser operation, I'll swap in a 1/8 inch end mill and drill the 8 holes necessary to accept the dowels that I'm going to use to attach the signs to the pegboard. I'm going to drill those holes about 5/1000 undersized compared to the dowels so that I'll get a bit of a compression fit when I place the dowels inside the holes. With the same bit, and actually part of the same operation, the 1/8 inch bit will move around each of the signs 3 times to release it from the maple plywood. You'll leave tabs along the way so that, again, the signs don't rattle around in the holes that are created by the bit moving around, and we'll be left with 4 signs that are attached to the overall board with some tabs. Next up, a simple hammer and chisel to release the signs from the backing piece of 1/8 inch maple plywood. There are still a few tab remnants left after that hammer and chisel operation, so I'll get a flat file and just sort of smooth those off the periphery of the signs. And finally some 220 grit sandpaper just to remove some of those small remaining splinters. Turns out I had 6 of the 8 dowels that I needed left over from some hand lettered signs that I had made. And so I'm cutting 2 more here with a hand miter box in order to have enough for all 4 of the signs. Using a 1-inch belt sander, I'll put a slight chamfer on one end of each of the little dowel pieces to make it easier to guide into the pegboard. To get the dowels in the signs, I'll simply tap them in with a hammer by putting them over the vise over a small gap and just tapping down a little bit. Turns out the 5/1000 interference seemed to work pretty well. They go in, but they're still tight enough that I feel like I didn't even really need any glue to hold them in place. Here's a picture of the completed signs resting on the bed of the CNC machine. All that's left to do is place my favorite tools in the holders and then place signs like this torque sign above those corresponding tools. That completes the project and the video. If you want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. I promised that I'd share a link for the technique that I used to make this Flash Tracks logo sign. You'll see a video in your upper left that I used to make a sign like this camping sign. And then in the lower left, you'll see a video that YouTube recommends. Thanks again for watching Flash Tracks Woodworking, and we'll see you next time.